It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Friday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. Apologies, I'm a little bit late tonight, but casual Friday. Casual fit, casually late. Our featured story, we are finally going to get into the TikTok story we're supposed to cover last night, but ran out of time. So tonight we'll be talking all about the forthcoming TikTok deal. This is not a done deal yet. It was supposed to be finalized today, but it's not there. This week it was reported that the Trump administration is facilitating the sale of TikTok from its parent company headquartered in China to a consortium of U.S. companies that among them include Oracle. And we discussed this just briefly last night. Oracle is owned by Larry Ellison, who is a Jewish billionaire, was briefly the richest man in the world earlier this week. He's a major friend of Netanyahu, the IDF, and already his company, Oracle, hosts all of the U.S. data that is with TikTok. So there was a big scare many years ago about the Chinese spyware. Beijing can access all the U.S. user data that is stored on the TikTok platform. For the past 5 years, that data has been hosted by one of these Jewish-owned Silicon Valley companies, Oracle. Now they're going to own the company outright, along with a number of other U.S. companies. They'll take 80% stake in TikTok, and it will be managed by a board, part of which will be appointed by the U.S. government. So we'll talk about that. We'll discuss how the deal is structured. We'll talk about how that is a major change and what kinds of changes we can expect to see on the platform. They're already making changes. And something that was underreported is that the new head of the moderation team on TikTok, take a wild guess. Who do you think it is? The new head of the moderation team for hate speech and safety on the platform is a former IDF soldier. Former IDF intelligence operative. That's who's now running the hate speech division on TikTok. Might explain why the algorithm has changed a little bit in recent months. So we'll talk all about that. Like I said, we'll pick up from last night. We were supposed to get to it. We're also going to talk tonight about President Trump's new rule on H-1B visas. This is actually good. You know, I've been hypercritical of the Trump administration, as you know, on all of it. The foreign policy, all the endless pro-Israel stuff, but also on immigration. And there's been a couple of major disappointments on immigration. That is the mass deportations on the illegal immigration side, but there's also Trump's seeming willingness to help Silicon Valley secure limitless H-1B visas, and that's on the side of legal immigration. For those that don't know, H-1B is a temporary work visa program, came around in 1990. It's supposed to be for specialized workers. But what it has become, or maybe what it was designed to be from the beginning, is basically the biggest pipeline of cheap labor into Silicon Valley, taking specialized American tech jobs. And it seemed at the beginning of the year and end of last year that the Trump administration was going to blow up the H-1B cap and make it so that Silicon Valley could bring in as many of these cheap foreign replacements as Silicon Valley had an appetite for. Now, however, there's a new announcement that he's going to do just the opposite. He's going to impose a $100,000 fee on every H-1B visa application, and that's an annual fee. So previously, H-1B workers would be here for 6 years. They renew their application every 3 years. It's a $5,000 fee at most per applicant. Now it's going to be $100,000 per year, which amounts to something like a tariff on foreign labor. It's a very positive development. I am worried, though. I wonder if what comes next will be eliminating the cap. And that's just a hunch. That's just speculation. That hasn't been announced or anything. But maybe I'm just cynical. Maybe I'm not optimistic about this administration, but it's a very good announcement, very good policy. I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I feel like that's going to be the next thing. They're going to charge $100,000 per application or per visa per approval. But what's going to come next is that they're going to blow up the cap and they're going to make it so that they can bring in as many as possible. And the only reason I say that is because it seems that this is part of a broader effort. And this is maybe the lead which is buried in the story. This seems like, and forgive the expression, seems like one of these late Republic types of policies. And this is part of many policies in many different areas, policy areas. They are really trying to milk every dollar that they can get out of labor, out of trade, out of taxes. And that is because the country is bankrupt. The country is bankrupt. The country is insolvent. There is no way that we can ever meet our financial obligations. We are cooked. And everything that you look at over the past 9 months, you can compartmentalize it as fiscal policy, monetary policy, labor, trade policy. But what they all have in common is it's all a money grab. That's what it is. Lowering the interest rate, money grab. I think that even has less to do with the labor market and maybe more to do, as people have pointed out, with the interest payments that are going to be due on our massive debt. This announcement about H-1B, it accompanies another announcement that we're selling citizenship for $1 million and $5 million, respectively, in 2 different programs. This is happening at the same time as the tariffs, which they're saying might become a significant source of revenue, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars per year. And that seems to be the same thing that is always being said along all these announcements is paying down the debt. $200 billion in tariffs to pay down the debt. $5 million platinum card visa, pay down the debt. Begging Powell to lower the interest rates, lower the debt payment. So that's why I'm a little bit worried. That's why I'm sort of waiting for the next shoe to drop on that one, but we'll talk about it. Those are going to be our 2 big stories. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash a like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the show. This is probably going to be the first show I've done since Charlie Kirk was murdered that is not about his assassination. And I just want to say we're going to stay on top of that. We're going to stay on top of the investigation in the coming weeks, but I don't believe there's been any major developments on that case in the past several days. I've looked at a couple of different things, just very briefly. One thing that we learned, which is interesting. Well, there's actually a few, and I do want to point these things out just very briefly. As you know, it's been a very contentious subject on the show. There's a lot of people that are under the impression that there was some wider conspiracy by the Jews, by Israel, to kill Charlie Kirk. And as you know, I am not convinced of this at all. And I've seen people say it's becoming clear with each passing day that a conspiracy is not very likely. It seems that with each new revelation, the more answers we get, it seems implausible. It seems more implausible that there's some conspiracy. And now the goalposts are shifting. So it started out with Israel did it, and you're covering it up, and you're avoiding the subject because you're afraid they paid you off. And now they're saying, well, why doesn't he want us to ask questions? Well, you could forgive us for not trusting the FBI. Well, why should we believe the FBI story? So there's been a very subtle changing of the goalposts. Last week, everybody was sure. Now they're saying, well, hey, well, you can't attack us for not believing the official narrative. And I think that's because the evidence is drying up. And I want to say at the outset, on the Israel conspiracy, initially, I just didn't say anything about it. I did my show last week on Thursday. I didn't even address it. And I tweeted throughout that week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I said nothing on the subject. And you know what people told me? They said, you're avoiding it, you're covering it up, you're hiding it. At first, I just said nothing. I didn't even talk about it. And people started coming at me. Why is he avoiding it? Why are you not talking about it? Are you in on it? And I said, all right, I'll talk about it. I said, I'm not convinced. I said, I'll lay out the case, which I did on Monday. I said, and here's the FBI narrative, and here's the discrepancies and problems with it. I said, and here is the Israel conspiracy, and here's where it makes sense, and here's where it doesn't make sense. And then people said, you don't believe it. Well, that's because they paid you off and you're afraid. It's like, okay, so first I was avoiding it. Then I addressed it head on and laid it out in detail, but I don't believe it. Now I'm a shill because I don't believe it. Okay. Well, here we are now, a week and a half after the fact. Charlie Kirk was murdered last Wednesday, so it's been a week and change since it happened. And a lot of these questions that were initially asked are now being answered. Because that's sort of how these things go. When something surprising happens, when a crisis happens, it actually takes time to establish all the facts. People are saying, we need answers. Where's the... And don't get me wrong. Granted, that is a healthy response. That's a healthy and normal response. You should ask questions about it. But people were asking it in a rhetorical way, as if to say, we're not actually interested in the answers. The question in itself is a form of evidence. What am I referring to in particular? Let me be specific. So last week, they said Charlie Kirk was just murdered. Israel's responsible. Now, the natural question for anyone skeptical, someone like myself, is why would Israel kill Charlie Kirk? He was pro-Israel until the day he died. What's the motive there? Anti-Semitism is exploding everywhere in the world. The whole world has turned against Israel. The youth, the right, the left, everyone has turned against Israel. Why would they kill one of the few people that is still pro-Israel? And they said, well, they're going to replace him with someone even more pro-Israel. I said, yeah, that seems far-fetched. That seems like a stretch. Ben Shapiro, in his coverage of it the following day, said, I will pick up the blood-stained microphone from Charlie Kirk and carry on the mission. Now, I took that to mean rhetorically that he is going to keep fighting the same fight, that he is going to do campus events, he will advocate for basic conservatism. Rhetorical. He didn't mean I'm literally going to take over Turning Point. I think what he meant was we're going to carry on the battle for conservatism. Everybody else said, that means Ben Shapiro's taking over Turning Point. It's regime change. They killed Kirk to get Shapiro in charge. Kirk was wavering, so they needed to appoint a more staunch, hardline person that is pro-Israel. Well, what happened in the past few days? Did Ben Shapiro replace Charlie Kirk? Idiots. Hey, dummies who don't understand rhetoric. Did Ben Shapiro take over from Charlie Kirk? So, and by the way, some people just lied about that. Some people just falsely reported and lied about that. They took that clip where Shapiro said, it's our mission to pick up his bloodstained microphone and carry on the work. And people just lied. And they said, Ben Shapiro announces he's taking over Turning Point. That's not what he said. But they just lied. Well, who was appointed as Charlie Kirk's replacement? His wife. His wife, Erica. Now, if Israel murdered Charlie Kirk, and if that was credible in any way, and Erica Kirk knew about that, how would that help Israel? If Charlie Kirk was wavering, he was obviously pro-Israel. He talked to his rabbi the morning that he died about how to defend Israel on his campus tour. If Charlie Kirk was wavering and Israel killed him, now he's replaced by his wife. Do you think she's going to be more or less pro-Israel than him? Israel just apparently murdered your husband and father of your children. So if he was wavering, now she's going to have a blood feud with Israel. How does that help them? In what way does that help? Tucker and Candace know that Israel killed him for his wavering support, but his wife didn't? Max Blumenthal knows that Charlie Kirk was taken out because he was having this crisis of conscience whether to support Israel. I guess his wife didn't get the memo. I guess Israel didn't account for his succession. They took him out. Fingers crossed. I hope Ben Shapiro replaces him. I hope it's not his wife, who knows how afraid of dying he is. Harrison Smith and Max Blumenthal know his state of mind, but not his wife. Harrison Smith, Max Blumenthal, and Ian Carroll and Candace Owens know he was killed because he was afraid of turning against Israel, but his wife would never speculate that. And Israel never accounted that his vengeful wife would supplant him in the organization. I guess they didn't take care of that part. The trap door lined up, the private jet to Tuba City, the blood packs ready to go. Didn't account for the succession. Okay. Then people said, who's that person taking the SD cards out of the cameras after Charlie Kirk was killed? Today, Charlie Kirk's producer comes on the air and said that was a Turning Point person. And he took the cards out of the cameras because people were stealing things from the booth. People jumped over the barricades and stole hats, and that person wanted to make sure that the footage didn't fall into the wrong hands. It's been turned over to the FBI. Apparently, Candace Owens has seen it too. Okay. So for the whole week, people said, what about the other camera angles? First of all, there's 100 camera angles. What are you talking about? Do you know what this event was? It's a live streamed public debate. So do you think they're hiding something? It's in plain sight of thousands of people, each one of them like this. What do you think they're getting away with? In other words, the booth that Charlie Kirk is speaking at is supposed to be this crime scene where they have to steal the SD cards to conceal something that took place in the booth. Okay, there's 100 cameras pointed at the booth. From the right, from the left, from up close, from far away. Oh, but there's one camera that we don't have the angle. I bet there's damning evidence on that SD card. Really? Well, apparently, not only does Turning Point have it, which is under the control of Erica Kirk, but also the FBI has it, and also apparently Candace Owens has it. So I'm sorry, once again, what are they hiding in the booth? If you really think there's something on the card, well, the murdered husband's wife has it, law enforcement has it, and apparently number one truther in the world, Candace Owens, has it. So we know that now, too. And it's like, at what point do people say, okay, this was some nut job? At what point is that a sufficient explanation? And the only reason I say that is like, look, that is also a problem. People say, And I've seen this on Twitter from people that I will never talk to again. I saw this from the Health Ranger. I saw it from Ryan Mata. I saw it from other grifters on Twitter. They said, Nick Fuentes is forced to say it's not the Jews, blackmailed, compelled, he's afraid. First of all, I've been talking about Israel and the Jews for 10 years. And by the way, I'm the only one that has been consistently doing that for 10 years. Where was Ryan Mata and Health Ranger, all these other people, when it was unpopular, when you were getting banned for saying it, debanked, censored? Second of all, I'll be saying it tomorrow and next week too. We'll be talking about it tonight. And by that, I mean Jewish power in Israel. I'm the first one to say Mossad kills people. The first one to say Israel's behind many of the conspiracies. There's like, and by the way, there's like this very strange, oxymoronic, contradictory thinking. Here's what I mean. Let's stop and talk about Charlie Kirk for a second. What exactly is Charlie Kirk's position? Does anybody know? Let's talk about his official and unofficial position. Charlie Kirk received a transfer with dignity, a dignified transfer. What that means is his casket, his coffin, was relocated from the scene of the crime to his home state of Arizona by the Air Force. The vice president and the military in their formal uniforms carried his coffin on the tarmac from Provo, Utah, or Orem, Utah, wherever, to Arizona. Do you know who receives a dignified transfer? Cabinet officials, soldiers. Charlie Kirk was not a cabinet official. Charlie Kirk was not a soldier, but the Trump administration sees him as one. This Trump administration gave him a dignified transfer because that is how, informally, that is how powerful and close he was to this administration. They want to lay him in state. They gave him a Memorial Day in the Senate. They want to put his body inside the rotunda. They want him to lie in state. They lowered the flag to half-mast. And that is because that is how he is or was perceived by the administration as effectively an unofficial member of it. This administration sees him as an unofficial cabinet member. And why? Because he was instrumental in delivering the youth for Trump in 2024. Charlie Kirk was working directly with TikTok to grow his platform. That major trend of 18 to 25s that shifted 20 points to the right in this election, and the young men that actually went for Trump for the first time, that was his doing. He was the head of Students for Trump. He's the bag man for a giant slush fund for the GOP. He's got a personal relationship with everyone in this administration. Trump, Vance, Stephen Miller, RFK. He brokered RFK Jr. endorsing Trump and dropping out of the race. Now, what do we know about this administration? For all of the red-pilled warriors out there, this should be an easy one. For Ryan Mata and all these other douchebags, this should be an easy one. What do we know, if nothing else, about this Trump administration? It is controlled by Israel. From top to bottom, J.D. Vance, what do we know about him? He was mentored and groomed and basically a creation of Peter Thiel, the creator of Palantir, who is running Palantir with people like Alex Karp, infiltrated from top to bottom by Israel, and Trump picked him at the behest of Tucker and Musk. What else do we know about Trump? Probably, if not for October 7th, the Jews would have never let him win. Because we know that Trump promised the West Bank to Israel, promised to bomb Iran for Israel. That's why I didn't vote for him. That's why I did not vote for Trump, because I knew that the second Nikki Haley went to Israel and endorsed Trump in an quid pro quo deal to get a $100 million commitment from Miriam Adelson, it was clear to me what this administration would be. And it's obvious now that that was the right intuition, because it's one thing after the other. And we'll get into even another thing tonight, all for the benefit of Israel. So you're telling, make this one make sense. I fought with Charlie Kirk his whole life because he was pro-Israel. I didn't vote for the Trump administration, which he was unofficially a part of, because it's so pro-Israel. Charlie Kirk defended all the pro-Israel policies of this administration. When Trump bombed Iran, he defended it. When Trump said we should have regime change in Iran, he found a way to defend it. When Trump buried the Epstein files, within a week, Charlie Kirk said, I'm done asking questions. I trust my friends like Stephen Miller to handle this. In August, this is a month ago, somebody asked if he would debate Candace and Nick Fuentes. He said there is demonic anti-Semitism and this Jew hatred has to be expunged from our society. He gets shot. Now I'm pivoting for saying it's a tragedy he got shot, but it probably wasn't Israel. I'm pivoting. I'm the only one that's being consistent. He was I'll say it in a nice way, he was a partisan for the GOP his entire life. He was a partisan for Trump his entire life, or for the most of the 2016 election through until last week. I believe the Trump administration was Israel controlled. I believe the Turning Point was Israel controlled. He gets shot. I don't automatically believe that's an Israel conspiracy because obviously, and now people say you're afraid. And somebody tweeted this. I had to repost it. They said, in what universe we're supposed to believe that they had to kill Charlie Kirk to shut up, but Nick Fuentes pivoted for the money? Really? And the reason that I am digging in on this, I cannot fucking wait for it to be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that this was some left-wing douchebag, because the low IQ anti-Semitism is dragging us to hell. It really is. We have reached a critical mass. And let's be honest, since October 7th, it has been a grift for many to glom on and post the most base, and I'm not saying based, I'm saying base, as in low, simple, primitive. It has been a fucking grift for various freaks and losers. They know that if they just shovel out the most low IQ, anti-Jew content, that's the easiest way to blow up on Twitter right now, just obviously. And as a consequence, now there isn't even a semblance of a movement. It's just an assortment of like Muslims that are anti-white, many of them, and many of them aren't American. A number of weirdo leftists, other assorted people, because it is so popular and just easy, frankly, to shit on Israel and get a following. Now we have a ton of these people. And they don't understand politics. They don't know anything about politics at all or how it works. All they know is how to press one button. And so everything that happens. Now, granted, because of the nature of the problem, that's a pretty reliable button to press. If you look at many of the events over the past 2 years, if you're pressing the Jew button every time, you're going to have like a 95% hit ratio, 99% hit rate. And on some level, you might be right. Bombing Iran, yup. Trump getting elected, yup. But some things, it doesn't really work. And it's showing the limitations of the new coalition. We have a real low versus elite human capital problem. And this might be the biggest demonstration of that. And the reason it's becoming a problem, I'll just reiterate very quickly, and then we'll move on into the news. I don't want to spend all my time talking about this again on the show tonight. But look, this is a battle. This is not a battle that I chose to have, but I'm being forced into it. I didn't want to step on everybody's toes. If people are blaming Israel, I said this to Dave Smith over the weekend. I said, if people are blaming Israel, I'm not really upset about that. But I started to get pissed off when people said, oh, you don't believe it automatically? You got the memo. You got the call. You're afraid. Fuck you. I'm still at my house. I'm afraid. I'm still at my fucking house where someone tried to kill me. I'm not afraid of fucking nothing. And I've been on this for 10 years. I'm not going to take shit from some health conspiracy theorist, from some crypto grifter pointing the finger at me saying I'm not a true believer. Fuck you. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there's two problems with this. And one I intimated already the other night, which is that people like Candace Owens, they're making us lose credibility. Because I'll be the first one to say, the Jews have too much power. That is 100% real. They do exploit the Holocaust as atrocity propaganda to prevent people from noticing or questioning their rule. The Israel lobby, as part of a broader Jewish influence operation, has too much influence and power in America. It's probably why we went to war in Iraq. It's why we're still there. It's going to lead us into a war with Iran. I believe they're lining up a false flag to get us into a major war with Iran. That is forthcoming soon. I'll be the first one to say it. Here's the problem, though. To get people on board with these ideas, it's sort of a leap for a lot of people to make. These are taboo ideas, formerly taboo ideas. People have been indoctrinated by Hollywood, by the education system, by the mainstream media to believe that anything in that area is anti-Semitic, hateful, crazy. The only way that we can convince people of the truth is if we bring some credibility to the table. And that comes with some seriousness. That comes with intellectual rigor. If you expect people to make that leap, if you expect people to trust you, why should they trust 27-year-old college dropout, extremely on live streamer and not Wikipedia? Why should they trust Dr. Lupus? Why should they trust Keith Woods? Why should they trust Dave Smith, Daryl Cooper, instead of the legacy institutions? Why should they not give the legacy institutions the benefit of the doubt, the experts, the scholars, the people with money and influence behind them? Why would they trust the ragtag independent analysts and journalists? Only if we have better information, only if we have more intellectual rigor, only if we have the better arguments, the superior facts. That's the only way on a long timeline we're going to win over normal people, is if we can, in an academic, in a scholarly, in a rigorous, intellectual way, make the case for a skeptical person. That's the only way. That's how I've done it on the show for 7 or 8 years. I have not for 7, 8 years beat the drum and said, everything's the Jews, everything. By rigorously arguing, using facts and using logic, the case. And these things are real, and there's evidence for them, and there's very compelling arguments, and it's rational, and we want people to hear those arguments. But once you bring in these low IQ people and they just start to say, and I saw this on Twitter, I couldn't believe it. People said, we don't need evidence. We don't need evidence? They said the precedent is good enough evidence. So we're not even going to talk about the facts of the case. It's just enough to say that other things happened there. That's not logical. Some people said, well, we're never going to get evidence. That's where you lose people. When you start to say that we are making assumptions without evidence, when you start to say we're literally going to blame Israel for everything, no matter what, just on account of, that's when you lose people. And that's, by the way, when very sophisticated Jewish people and Zionists, they're going to look for that opening. And they're going to say, look, these people don't know what they're talking about. They are crazy. They are cranks. They just blame the Jews for everything. They're making assumptions. Credibility is very important because they have a bigger megaphone. So if you're not arguing a good case, if you don't have credibility, they got a way bigger megaphone to poke holes in your argument and make you look like an idiot. It's a big problem. Here's number two. Here's the other issue. I already talked about that a little bit the other night. Here's the second problem. Ultimately, what we want to do is organize politically. Okay? What is our end game? Our end game is we want to control the United States government. Okay? We want to control the United States government such that we can drain the swamp of all of this influence. We can take power back from the money power. We can take national power back from the money power of Wall Street, of Silicon Valley, take power back from the foreign intelligence, foreign money, from Israel. And the only way to do that is with a political coalition. But what exactly is our political coalition going to be? Because I'll be the first one to tell you, when people start to say that, like, we're going to team up with Antifa, that just goes to show we're not serious about building a political coalition. When people start to say the left isn't real, there is no such thing as the radical left, right and left is a fiction, that's a fabrication. Really? So it was my imagination that thousands and thousands of liberals were celebrating the death of a white man because he was white? That was my imagination. Palantir put that in my mind. You have a lot of people in this coalition, Muslims. We're celebrating that Charlie Kirk died because he's a Zionist. Sorry, but this is not a Muslim country, okay? This is not a Muslim country. This will never be a Muslim country. And I'm starting to suspect that there are a lot of Muslims that they hate Israel and they really don't care that much about white people. If a white person gets killed and all of our Muslim allies that hate Israel, they're joining up with these like BLM and Antifa types celebrating the death of a white man because he supported colonialism and imperialism. It's like, wait a second, I don't really think you're on my side, actually. And the same goes for some of these left-wing types. We need to be very clear about what this political coalition is. It's not just anti-Israel, it's also pro-white. I saw some asshole say, well, Nick Fuentes is just a Zionist for white people. He's Netanyahu for white people. To the extent that Netanyahu is an ethno-nationalist fascist, yeah, we want America to be white. Problem? And you got left-wingers saying, well, that makes you just as bad as Israel. No, it actually doesn't. It actually doesn't. Being against the invasion of our country by immigrants, being in favor of preserving white America, no, that doesn't make... Netanyahu, first of all, is a war criminal. Second of all, he's influencing America. A foreign country is controlling our home country. Our home country controlling our home country is not the same, obviously. So maybe this is actually a good opportunity to say, we are not the same as these left-wing communists. We are not the same as these Muslim third worldists. We may all have problems with Israel, but we don't all have the same problem with Israel. A lot of these Muslims, they don't give a fuck about America. And they don't give a shit about white people either. They hate Israel because their homeboys are being killed. And I get it. You know what? I understand that. And on some level, as a Christian, I sympathize with them. But they do not care about America. And that is the country in which we reside, and that is the name of the show. The show is called America First. So you go to these protests, and don't kid yourself. They're out there in their keffiyeh or whatever. They're out there in their bandanas, not because they give a fuck about our country, but because, you know, Muslims are dying. And if it wasn't for that, it would be back to your regularly scheduled programming. They'd be out there with the raised fist right next to BLM. That's just the truth. They'd be talking about Trump's Muslim ban. You know what? I think Muslims should be banned from America. And not because I'm a Zionist, because whether Israel existed or doesn't exist, I actually don't want to live near a mosque. Because I'm a Christian. I think Muslims are invading Europe. Tommy Robinson didn't tell me to say that. That's just true. I'm pro-white and anti-Israel. You can be both. You should be both. And the same goes for the left. You know, does the left really have a problem with Jewishness in itself? Do they see the problem with Jewishness in itself? The left was created by Jews. Who do you think made the left? Karl Marx himself was Jewish. The Bolsheviks were Jewish. The Frankfurt School was Jewish. Who do you think funds the modern left? Jewish billionaires. Do you think that the right and the left are going to get together and we're going to go after Jewish billionaires and we're going to go after the open society? The left would be pushing the open society with or without Israel, with or without George Soros. We're opposed to that too. So let's be clear about what we are. We are nationalists. That is what we are. I am a far-right nationalist. I am not a communist. I am not left-wing. I am not Muslim. And I am not in favor of the open society. Yes, you can be all things at once. It is a multi-front war. I do not want to... I think Israel is our adversary. I think we should give Iran the bomb to check Israel, to balance Israel. I think we should take billions of dollars from these pro-Israel billionaires. They're foreign agents. I think we should register AIPAC. I think we should disallow non-Christians from having power in our society. But I also think we should close the borders. I also think we should have mass deportations. I also think we should shut down Muslims running our society. I don't want Zohran Mamdani being a mayor. That guy's an anti-white communist. Same thing with Ilhan Omar. I don't care how base she is on Israel. She hates whites. So maybe this is an inflection point where we can say what is our movement and what isn't our movement. It doesn't mean that we can't build coalitions where possible. It is not my mission to alienate Muslims. It's not my mission to alienate left-wingers. This is my admonition of our own side, which is don't forget what we are. And don't forget what we're fighting for. Take your own side. Supporting Muslims is not taking our own side. Muslims are taking their side. Communists are taking their side. We need to take our side. And what is our side? We are far-right nationalists. And here's the perfect example. When left-wingers are out there right now saying that Charlie Kirk was killed by an Israeli, the only reason they're saying that is because the left is implicated. They're running cover for their own side. That's why they're doing it. Why do you think Jackson Hinkle and the American Communist Party, why do you think they're so eager to pin the blame on Israel? Because it was probably a left-wing communist that shot Charlie Kirk. And those left-wing communists, they want to kill me too. Left-wing communists are shooting up Catholic churches. Left-wing communists beat up the Proud Boys, beat up Richard Spencer, beat up anybody that is a pro-white, Israel-critical activist on the right wing. So it's actually not taking our own side to run cover for the left. It's not taking our own side to make excuses for the left, to make excuses and prevent the government from crushing Antifa. The government crushes the far right. Why wouldn't we let them crush the far left? Level the playing field. If you want to talk about if there was some kind of effort to take the government boot off the neck of the far right, then I'd be in favor of that. But that's not the conversation. Anyway, so I know people think maybe this is divisive. Good, it should be. I know people think maybe I'm harping on this. I am harping on this because this is an important point. And unlike Tucker and Candace, I am not going to pander or placate a crowd of low IQ people that got red-pilled yesterday. And I saw that from Tucker. I saw Tucker shamelessly pander, and that's what it was. And listen, you know, maybe me and Tucker are in something like a détente. I will tell no lies. I'm not going to be polemical here, but I thought that that's just what this was. It was shameless pandering. On his show, he hosted the Charlie Kirk show today. And Tucker said, well, I don't believe Israel was involved. He said, but I understand why people don't believe the government narrative because we've been lied to, and I get it that they don't. Do you feel stupid? You should feel stupid. When you hear that, I hope you feel like a stupid baby, because that is how you are being treated. That is how Tucker and many of these people on the dissident media circuit, that is how they have come to know how to treat you. To treat you like a whining, crying, stupid, pants-shitting baby. They have to wipe your disgusting, dirty asshole. Because they know that if they tell you the truth, Tucker knows that if he goes on his show and says, that's ridiculous, Israel doesn't kill Charlie Kirk, people are going to say, oh, he's a shill, blah, blah, blah. So he's got to go on the show and say, well, I don't believe that. But, you know, if you believe that, oh, I totally get it. I understand. You've been lied to. I get it. That's pandering. That is shameless pandering. He is shamelessly placating irrationality. He is shamelessly placating the irrational mob that is so gaslit and frankly, low IQ, that's all they know how to do anymore is hit one button, one note. And it's not the worst note. It's not the worst button to press. It's not actually a bad thing. You know, I said this, I told you to Dave Smith the other week. I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing that everyone's blaming Israel, but it isn't true. And someone needs to say that, actually. So, you know, this movement, if it's going to be a movement, it actually needs leadership. If this is going to be a movement where people are going to organize, then yeah, actually some people are going to have to lead, and there does need to be credibility. It can't always be like a mob of malcontents that hate Israel because they saw a post on 4chan and they know nothing else about politics. And there actually do need to be real, I don't know if you want to call them intellectuals, but you do need people with some credibility that are willing to tell the truth and actually lead people towards a political victory. Rather than what it is now, which is just like a bunch of malcontents screaming and yelling on the internet and just trying to outdo each other. That's literally, and listen, I'll name some names here. You know, Dan Bilzerian, I love this guy. This guy's had my back from the beginning. I respect the hell out of him. He has staked so much and gone so hard on this question. But I see, he said that he disagrees with some of my takes on this issue. I've seen his take on this issue. And all it is just like, it's the fucking Jews. The right and left is the fucking Jews. This is the fucking Jews. That's the fucking, and it just seems like there's no development. There's no, it's not progressing. It just seems like a collection of malcontents on it's not even on the right, but it's just a collection of malcontents online that are just looking for how to apply this answer to every question. You know, and that's sort of what it's become in many ways. Twitter Spaces, podcasts, where people just go around and around and around looking for ways to fit everything into this construct. Looking for novel and creative and new pathways. This is actually the Jews. That's actually the Jews. That's everything, literally everything that ever is and ever was is this, is all the same thing. and then going more extreme, and then always doubling down, tripling down. Well, people are distressed. And my objective on the show, one, is it's actually about America. It's with a mind towards how do we one day create sovereignty? How do we reclaim sovereignty and independence from Jewish power? And how we do that is we actually have to understand power and politics. So I actually want a sophisticated understanding of how things work. I actually want to know exactly how it works. Not like, oh, there's trap doors and blood packs and, why did the FBI do this? Oh, this stinks like JFK. It's like, no, it actually doesn't. So this is me seceding from, if you're calling it like, and even people calling it the JQ space, it's like, oh my gosh. Everything's like JQ branded now. People send me these weird ass emails and they're like, let's go hang out and talk about the Jews. Let's go hang out and talk. We should go and talk about Jew pills. It's like, what is wrong with you? Like, we have to integrate that into a comprehensive worldview. Yes, the Jews are running the world. Yes, they're extremely powerful. Yes, it's been going on for hundreds of years. Yes, there's a 2,000-year tension between Rome and Israel. Like, I understand it better than you do. But people have really just, it's going to a very bizarre place. And this is maybe the high watermark for me. I'm sort of, it's like become a definable issue. And the moment that people start to tell me Charlie Kirk of all people got killed by Israel, that's where it's like, okay, you jumped the shark. That's the jumping the shark moment. Charlie Kirk was killed by Israel. You won't entertain the notion that Charlie Kirk, a polemical culture warrior, a mouthpiece for the GOP, you think it's insane that he got killed by a left-wing nut job because there's no left-wing nut jobs? Because there's no right and left? It's all just, that's the jumping the shark moment for me. So anyway, that's that. But I do want to move on. We've talked about that enough. We are going to move on. We'll dive into, and by the way, we got a fully loaded show. It is about this topic. But to me, this assassination and everybody's shameless willingness to make assumptions and draw conclusions with no evidence, and then, because I did not do the same thing, to immediately then doubt my sincerity. That's what I have a problem with. And I'll just recap it very quickly. Here are the things I do not have a problem with. These are the things I have a problem with. I have no problem with people thinking that Israel killed Kirk. I have no problem people asking questions about it. I probably believe that Charlie Kirk was evolving on his position. These are all things that are perfectly fine. My issue is, how did this conversation evolve? Kirk was murdered on a Wednesday. And because within 24 hours, I didn't automatically blame the Jews, people questioned my motivations. That's what I have a problem with. He was murdered on a Wednesday. We didn't even have a suspect until 34, people say between 33 and 36 hours later. We didn't even have a guy. And because I didn't automatically say the Jews did it with zero evidence, people said, oh, he's afraid. He got the call. He turned. He pivoted. He's with Daily Wire now. And it's like, have you lost your damn mind? We're living in the world where Charlie Kirk got shot for being anti-Israel, but I got bought off because I don't believe that. That's when you know it's gone too far. That's insane. So if you said that, fuck you. Dead to me. All these, and I saw so much of it from people I really surprised, dead to me. I want nothing to do with those people. I'll never forget it. Anyway, but we'll move on. That really bothered me, especially because I put out a message last week that I thought it was actually the right message. I do think they wanted to create division between the right and left. I encourage people to back away and not take the bait on that. And then I get scum-sucking communist Muslims, stupid assholes on Twitter saying, you got the call, you got the memo. I red-pilled you, dipshit. You voted for Trump last year. I'm the only one that's being consistent. People expect me to appease them. I will appease nobody. Anyway, that makes me lose my mind. So that's just me ranting on that, on my frustration. And, you know, I'll be honest, it's pure frustration. That's just pure frustration. It makes me furious. I am absolutely angry and frustrated and beside myself that was the message. And some of it is coming from bad faith actors. That doesn't bother me. You know, Jackson Hinkle, he knows he's going to jail. It bothers me that it's coming from people that I thought had my back. It bothers me that it's coming from people, and even people are jumping through hoops trying to defend me in some ways. So yeah, I'm irritated by it. I'm irritated and I'm furious, and that's why I'm digging in. Because it's like, you don't understand. We're not, the tail will not wag the dog here. The tail does not wag the dog here. And for posterity, for anybody that thinks I am captured by Israel or by my audience, let this be a lesson. The tail does not wag the dog here. We don't play that. Homie, don't play that. We're not playing the game where my audience would lynch me if I didn't blame the Jews. Fuck you. And it cuts both ways. So that's that. But we're going to move on. All right. But enough about that. Now, coincidentally, what is our news for the night? Well, our featured story, we're talking all about TikTok. And coincidentally, this is where that heuristic applies. Do I think Israel killed Charlie Kirk? No. Do I think they're taking over TikTok? Yes. Why? Because there's facts to back it up.
All right, man. The reason why I'm frustrated is because I already recorded what I'm getting ready to record right now. However, the file didn't save, but neither here nor there. No complaints. We don't do all the complaining. That just allows me to get my thoughts together even more and share my feedback. So this is what I'm feeling after hearing Nick vent his frustrations over this situation. I feel like everybody's in defense mode. I feel like a lot of people are in defense mode, and I feel that we're allowing ourselves, right? All of us. It really is all of us. We're allowing ourselves to be divided and conquered. This seems to be a reoccurring theme, and I see it happening with Nick. And it's funny because the other day I had a conversation, I think it was on Friday's show, where I went back and forth on whether or not or how we should go about giving people grace, especially our leaders, the influencers, the people with voices, the people that are fighting the good fight for us, right? And initially I was like, we got to give people grace. And then I was like, well, you know, people still have to be held accountable for the things that they're saying, because people can get frustrated and say certain things where it ends up causing people to react, or causing people, let's say, like Nick was talking about with Matt Walsh a couple weeks, where it's causing people, you're telling people to take up arms. You want people's heads on spikes. That person that is super frustrated, that's listening to you, that feels like a white disaffected young man where the country's not working in my best interest, and I'm pissed off, and there's this black guy on the train and he stabbed this white girl, and he did it because she's a white girl. That can make people react in a way. Perhaps this is the case with Charlie Kirk, with something that he said may have caused, if you believe that this guy, I think Tyler Robinson, did it, whatever the case may be. Let me get back to what I was going back and forth with in my head about giving grace. Nick is frustrated. Nick has put a lot on the line, a lot more than all of us, I can say, watching this. Perhaps can say that we're pretty, with a lot of confidence, at least for me. Nick has put more on the line than me. He's risked more than I've risked. He's lost a lot more than I've lost, whether it's getting a bank account, whether it's being on certain platforms, the hate that comes his way, having somebody come to his house with a gun, all of these different things can play a significant role and can lead to us becoming extremely frustrated. But where the grace comes in for me, now you can extend the grace however you see fit, but where it comes in for me is not only what I said the other day as far as hearing somebody's full context, because somebody could listen to Nick's full show and be like, nah, I listened to the full show. And my takeaway was, nah, he's racist. He's pushing for this. He's inciting violence. Maybe that will be your takeaway. Me, I'm listening to it from a standpoint of somebody who's extremely frustrated based on what they've put on the line. And that frustration may come out in ways that I think are detrimental in certain areas to the overall goal. Now, who's to say what the overall goal is? I'm just going based on what Nick has said as far as us in America living in harmony, right? Us embracing a mindset that makes sense with principle, moral compass, integrity, moving in that way. I think it's detrimental when we get caught up in the whole division and conquer, right? Divide and conquer. Even when you see it from a standpoint of Nick, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick beefing with them. Why? Y'all have been the most courageous in calling out a lot of the same things. Now, Nick's done it for a lot longer, perhaps, especially when it comes to Israel. Candace has done it, I believe, longer than Tucker. Perhaps people could say that it took Tucker getting fired from Fox. Now he's doing all this. I think the situation was different for Candace, but neither here nor there. Y'all are united on 90% of the things that y'all say. It seems to me it would make sense for not only y'all to unite, but to unite the people that follow y'all and get on the same page and not become distracted by the he say, she say stuff. Nick bringing up the fact that Candace, she's talking about, why is this person taking out the memory card on this camera? Why is this person bringing down the camera? Then it comes out that, oh, that's actually somebody that works on the staff. And based on what Nick was giving the feedback, it makes sense. Turning Point, they wanted to take out the memory card. People were stealing stuff, hats, whatever. So they wanted to make sure that they had access to that, or that nobody had access to it, I should say, besides them and law enforcement, whoever. But Candace being skeptical of these things, when it turns out, let's say where, oh, it's just the Turning Point USA thing, it's easy to look at Candace and say, oh, see, she has us going down these rabbit holes, the conspiracy theories, and it makes us all look silly. But I would argue that it puts a lot of pressure in certain areas that need to be applied pressure on to see if something is off. Just to see if something is off. Because who do we think is going to, do we just trust that the people that are giving us information are just going to give us everything? Or do sometimes we need to shine a light on something and then make them explain it? I mean, looking at this situation, and probably this is one of Nick's other frustrations where, people are now starting to say, oh, Nick's paid off by Israel. I'm sure that does piss him off, especially people that are calling him out for being paid for by Israel, people that never risked the things that Nick has risked, his well-being as well as his livelihood, to call out Israel for the last, 10 or so years. So, of course, him now getting that feedback, now he may feel like where he has to respond and say, y'all are chasing something ridiculous, rather than just let's get the information. Candace has her techniques. Tucker may have his techniques, but we all seem to be fighting the same fight, whether we have the same strategy, whether we have the same type of followers, we're still fighting the same fight. So that's just kind of some of the thoughts that I had when I was watching Nick. And even when Nick mentioned certain things as far as the logic that he was making, like why would, let's say if Israel was involved, why would they get rid of Charlie? And then Nick was saying that his wife replacing Charlie as CEO proves or shows that, what do they think, that they're going to get rid of Charlie Kirk and then his wife is not going to have vengeance and call out Israel if they were involved? Nick, I don't think that it always works like that. I don't think that everybody is you. I don't think that everybody is Candace. I don't think that everybody is Tucker. I don't think that everybody is Dave Smith, where you put pressure on them. Let's focus on Candace. You put pressure on her and she comes back with a vengeance. She will not let it go. What happens, I believe, is people typically actually respond like Charlie Kirk, to where Charlie Kirk may be in his private conversations. It's being reported by Dave Smith, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens that he had certain hesitations, frustrations with Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. Tucker said that he didn't even like Bibi Netanyahu. It seems to be that Charlie was fighting it in a different way. Charlie was just going to have Tucker at the event, have Dave Smith at the event, but not necessarily feel comfortable perhaps voicing his exact opinions on it. So unless you're a Candace type of mindset, and maybe Nick's seeing it through what he would do if he was in a situation where somebody close to him was taken out, he would double down on it. Everybody's not like that. So just from that standpoint, I'm not sure that it would work that way. But something else that I was thinking about as I was reviewing the video was Dan Bilzerian. I was watching some of Dan Bilzerian's recent interviews. He was on the Hodge twins a while back, but they just re-uploaded it, I believe. And what else was I watching him on? I forget. He was on Sneako's show, a couple different things, and they were talking about Nick Fuentes. Now, Nick has made it clear that he's cool with Dan Bilzerian. Dan Bilzerian has always had his back and supported him, but that they disagree on certain things. One of the things that I disagree on, or that I think they disagree on, was Dan Bilzerian was saying that Muslims and Christians need to come together and work together. Nick had, obviously, if you watched this full show, if you got to this point, I'm sure that you didn't skip Nick's part and just come directly to hear my feedback. But you heard Nick say that, I mean, he was saying certain stuff that, hold on, let me be clear. I wrote this down. He thinks Muslims should be banned from America. He doesn't want to live near a mosque because he's Christian. He thinks that most of the Muslims that people are aligning with, they're only being aligned with because they'll call out Israel, just like maybe other people call out Israel, but deep down, these Muslims, they don't like white Americans. One thing that I will give Nick is that I think that he is right. A lot of people do embrace this, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, during convenience. So then you start making these partnerships based on just what's convenient right now, not necessarily based on us aligning with the same values, principles, and morals. You get what I'm saying? It's just like, oh, they're an enemy. Oh, I don't like this person. Oh, somebody else doesn't like this person. All right, we'll team up. But that doesn't mean that the other person that doesn't like the same person I don't like, that we share, the same principles and morals. I agree with Nick when he says that. However, just from an overall standpoint, I would think that it would be best for us to come together rather than lumping people into a category and just saying like, I don't want Muslims like in the country. Why? Because you don't like Ilhan Omar? Like, I get that. I don't like her either. I don't think that she prioritizes America. Or Mamdani, I don't know as much about him, but I'm sure if I looked into him, there's certain things that I wouldn't like. So a lot of these, and what's funny is a lot of the principles that I dislike the Democrats overall for, I would agree that a lot of those principles are backed by Israeli money in a lot of ways. A lot of these woke culture ideologies that I can't stand. But I don't, maybe I'm missing the point. I think y'all understand what I'm saying. Let me stay on task. But just this overall feeling, and real quickly, I don't know if y'all caught it that Nick said that he spoke to Dave Smith. Like, he just threw that in there. I think that he threw that in there. I meant to actually go back and double check, like, because he said he spoke to Dave Smith. I think that that's good. I think that that's people who have had words towards each other. I think it's more Nick expressing certain frustrations with Dave Smith getting opportunities to talk about Israel because he's Jewish, rather than Nick getting the opportunity to talk about these things. So I'm glad that they did speak, because I saw Dave Smith commend Nick on how he responded after the Charlie Kirk situation. And I just sit back and wonder, like, yo, I like Dave Smith. I think a lot of the things that he says are aligning with what Nick Fuentes says. Same thing with Tucker, same thing with Candace. There's not a lot of people that have this type of mindset and that have the courage to stand on these things. So why not come together? Why not come together? So when it comes to the divisive nature, I'm being honest. I think that Nick's frustrated, and I think that he's almost in a position where, and this could just be me connecting dots that aren't there, but what I initially thought was Nick's base, and it changes every time I seem to put up a video. I'm almost like, oh, when I first was introduced to Nick Fuentes, maybe about a month ago, really diving into his videos, I was told that his base is, young, angry white Christians who feel disaffected and are pissed off at, other people. Nick is the racist. He's a misogynist, all these different things. He's a Nazi. These are all the things that I used to hear about Nick. So I automatically attribute that to his followers. But then when I started watching his videos, I started looking at the comments. When I started posting the videos, looking at the comments, I'm like, oh, his base is a lot different than I thought that his base was. Now, maybe he still does have those same people that are frustrated as well and that are angry as well. So therefore, they voice their frustrations in ways that perhaps are racist, misogynist, all these different things. When I've seen Nick try to, what it seems like to me, transition his message to be more open to people and more based on principles, morals, and values, rather than, oh, I'm just talking about white people and not including any black people, not including any Muslim people. It was just people that align on principles, morals, and values. Now, when a situation, let's say, like the black guy on the train in North Carolina stabbing the white Ukrainian refugee, it's almost like now Nick has to answer to his core base or what I perceived as his core base initially. What it's like, see, Nick, you said it wasn't. You said that we can include these people. You said that you said that those people could be part of the movement. But now look at how all these black people are responding to Charlie Kirk. Look at how they can't be. And then Nick has to now get to a point where it's like, damn, now he's pissed off because he may have extended in his mind to a particular group. But now he's like, okay, I got to lean back into my core following. I don't know what's going on. But he acknowledged that he's frustrated. He acknowledged that he's frustrated, and this is one of the areas that I think that we all can grow, how we respond to certain things, what we're pushing when we do become frustrated. So, and earlier I said, a lot of times our frustrations can get us off of our goal. We can get emotionally triggered and lose sight of what the actual goal is. And some people may say, well, maybe Nick is only out here fighting for, white Christians. A lot of people who watch this show, they may hear Nick say, we want America to be white, and think that that's exactly what he is fighting for. I don't know. I know that depending on what video I watch of him, I get different takeaways, if I'm being honest. But what I also do know is that I used to be just like Nick. And I obviously didn't risk the same things that Nick risked or lose out on as many opportunities as Nick has lost out on, or have somebody show up at my house with a gun. I used to be in nationalist mindset. I used to be on the mindset where it's like, I'm pro-black. I'm rooting for everybody black. That's what it is. Anybody white, I'm calling out white supremacy. And if you get offended by it, I don't care, because if you're offended by it, then that means that it probably includes you. So if it doesn't include them, then they shouldn't get offended by it. This was my mindset. Now, maybe some people will step back and say, well, that's the right mindset to have. It wasn't the right mindset for me to have based on me changing my goals, changing my focus. I didn't like where that took me. I didn't like where that energy took me. And perhaps for a lot of people, they may say, well, what's wrong with that? A lot of people don't take things and obsess over them and lock into them the way that I may do it. Just me looking at it. When I look at my friends and stuff, yeah, y'all, we shopping black, we celebrating Juneteenth, but y'all not on this, y'all not on it the way that I'm on it. That's how I do stuff. If I do stuff, I'm all in with it. So I didn't like where that took me. And I'm glad that I was all in on it, because I found out probably quicker than I otherwise would have, like, that's not for me where I want to go. That's not the goal that I have for me. My goal is, how can I get humanity to build together, to live in harmony together? And my overall goal is, I want us to live in peace and harmony, just humanity. Now, people may sit back and say, like, yo, that's a far-fetched goal. That's it. You know, it's so funny that the chaos can be realistic, that we can sit back and say, like, yo, we're a couple people away from pressing buttons from this thing all being over. So we can have that extreme and accept that extreme. But then the other extreme of us just living in harmony, which I'm sure everybody would, you know, if you were given a survey and you said, hey, do you want everybody to live in harmony, or do you want everybody to, you know, do you want us to be on the brink of a nuclear war, which probably the whole world will blow up? I'm pretty sure people would say, like, no, we can live in harmony. Think about it the way that you want to think about it. That's where I choose to lean into. That's where I choose to focus on. Now, people may say, like, yo, you're shooting for the stars. You're shooting for the, yeah, well, what's the saying? You know, you shoot for the stars, and if you miss, you land on the moon or something like that. I don't know what the energy is, but that's just how I take stuff. I'm going to rock. That's the goal that I have. That's what I'm working towards. That's what I want to be a representation of. I believe in being the change that we want to see in the world. So therefore, that's what I'm leaning into. Is it far-fetched? Perhaps. Do I believe in it? Yes. Am I delusional? Maybe. Do I care? No. That's what I'm rocking with. So I just want to make sure that when I say these things, that we understand why I'm saying these things, or that even I understand why I'm saying things. I want to be clear on my why, because when I hear Nick and a lot of other religious people who may share the same mindset as Nick, I'm talking specifically to you all, that may only be pushing for, let's say, a group of white Christians or whatever. There's other people that may only be pushing for Muslims, groups that may be just pushing for Jewish people. If you truly believe that there's one God and that there's only one creator, then that means that we all came from the creator and that we're all children of the same creator, which would mean that we're all brothers and sisters, right? So if we're all children of God and religion is supposed to help us or give us guidance in order to honor God, what would be honoring God more than having all of his children live in harmony? I'm not a parent. But thinking about what my parents instilled in my brother and I, it was that at the end of the day, your closest bond needs to be with each other. To the point where, well, when we were kids, like, that was the worst thing. You fight your brother, you're getting the worst spanking that you're gonna get. If you fight your brother, that's just, it's not acceptable. That's what we don't do. And we never really, honestly, it worked for us because we never really had a lot of fights that we hear siblings, you know, having, because it was instilled in us early. And it's almost to the point where I think back, like, what would God identify as success, or what would be success in God's eyes? And I think about my parents. Like, when my parents, if they had to choose, now these are extremes, but if they had to choose between my brother and I being successful but having a bad relationship, or us having a good relationship and, you know, maybe us not being as successful but working together, I'm pretty sure that my parents would choose, look, I want y'all having a good relationship. Y'all will figure out what success looks like for you, how to attain it. Like, but the main thing where everybody needs, where that needs to, the top priority needs to be y'all aligned and working together, living in harmony, you and your brother. So I would think that that would be the same thing that God would want, right? We practice different religions, but I believe the majority of us believe that there's one God that created all this. So that's why I can say with confidence, especially people that, you know, claim to be religious, that, hey, what goal? Maybe I can ask the question, I'm saying with confidence, what goal is more important than figuring out how we can live in harmony? There's a reason why that's the toughest challenge. Aren't most of the toughest challenges we face, don't they produce the best fruit? Isn't that how it's supposed to be? So I just, that's really my thought on it. And one thing that I wanted to mention also, a little bit off the topic, but maybe it does come down to God and us, you know, living in harmony together, is when Nick was talking about he didn't vote for Trump because he knew Trump was bending the knee to Israel. As soon as Nikki Haley endorsed Trump, after Nikki Haley made a trip to Israel, I missed that. Completely missed that. Perhaps that would have changed my mindset on voting. I've expressed my frustrations just like Nick has with Donald Trump and his administration. I'll say it again. I've said it every show. I think that he's completely getting ran by. He's on a leash. He's on a leash that Bibi Netanyahu and Israel are holding. I don't know what they have over him. I don't know what it is, but it's clear for me to see. It's clear for me to see. Now, I could have voted for him and try to rationalize, well, he's doing this here. He's doing this good here. No. I'm disappointed, extremely disappointed. It's terrible. It's terrible how I think that he's complicit in a lot of these things, getting bullied by Bibi Netanyahu and Israel to cause a whole lot of destruction in that Middle East region when he campaigned on doing the opposite. So getting back to Nikki Haley, if I would have known and connected these dots with Nikki Haley, with her support and how it came, and even me being aware of Donald Trump receiving a lot of money from a lot of the Israeli Jewish backers, maybe I would have changed my mind, because I still had the mindset of, I didn't vote the previous two elections because a bunch of different reasons. A lot of the reasons why Nick says that I believe that he didn't vote this election, or at least why he didn't vote for Trump. I was still thinking that Trump was the grassroots guy that was going against the establishment. To my surprise, to my ignorance, maybe, to me being naive, I was wrong. I was wrong. So when I see that Trump gets an endorsement by Nikki Haley, who goes out to Israel and is signing bombs, think about it from this standpoint. We just talked about how God, like, we're all children of God. And here Nikki Haley is signing a bomb that violates God's commandment, that violates, maybe we'll say, God's most important commandment. Thou shalt not kill, right? But you're signing bombs. It's almost like not only are you violating God's commandments, but you're putting your name on it. It's like with a contract. You ever have a contract where you need to change something, adjust something in the contract? So you may cross something out, write something new in, and then you have to sign by it, just to, or at least initial, but you got to sign by it just to let people know, like, hey, this is a change. Nikki Haley almost is like, oh no, God said this. Let me cross that out. Let me write that. No, these missiles, these bullets, this ammo, this whatever she was signing. I think she was signing missiles. This is okay to kill for Israel, no matter whether it's civilians, no matter who it is, no matter whether it's a genocide. No, this is good. Forget what God said. I'm signing over this. That's really like how I see things happening. That's really doing laundry in the back if you hear the beeping, so my apologies. But I just I violated my own rule. I overlooked my rule, which is follow the money. Shout out to my brother Queez. He always reminds us to follow the money. And I think that's from The Wire, if y'all watch The Wire, but follow the money. And perhaps now more than ever, that follow the money mindset theme, it's explaining why a lot of these things are happening around the world, with Israel's influence on American politics, perhaps with our involvement with Ukraine, perhaps with Trump now picking a fight with Venezuela and the cartel. I say that with air quotes because a lot of people don't believe that it's the cartel. A lot of people believe that he's using that as an excuse. We've talked about that before. I don't know. Maybe he's trying to wipe out some of Big Pharma's competition. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but a lot of this stuff just seems weird. And I want to just finish up with something that I should have said earlier when we talk about, I think I was focusing on with Candace Owens pressing the issue. And, that's something that Nick has an issue with. These people, they're making us look bad. People won't take us seriously when Candace is just blaming Israel for this, and there's no evidence. One thing that I do know that is real is that Bibi Netanyahu has, what it seems like to me, misleading, to be nice, lying. If I really am being honest, it seems like he's lying. He seems like he's lying. And even from the disrespect that I thought was disrespect, maybe y'all won't, but him sending out a message about Charlie Kirk's passing before Trump sent out a message. Like, that was just very, almost like, it's like, yo, they're just bullying Trump. That was one of these subtle things that wasn't too subtle to me, but I guess came across subtle to a lot of people, which is like, why are you like, give Trump should be announcing this. He got Trump elected. He wasn't even rocking with you based on what his friends say. But Bibi Netanyahu seeming to just use whatever situation he can to get people to see Israel through a favorable lens to justify them doing any and everything in that region and to continue receiving American tax-paying dollars, not only with the financial support, but our moral support of looking the other way when they commit whatever genocide and destruction in that region that I believe that they're committing. So I don't know. I'm waiting for more information to come out as far as who was involved in this situation with Charlie Kirk. But I don't need to wait for that to address how weird Bibi Netanyahu has been behaving and acting after Charlie Kirk's death. And it's not like he doesn't have a track record of doing this type of stuff. He did this with Iraq. He does this on a consistent basis. He misleads us. He propagandizes us. He lies to us, whether it's weapons of mass destruction or all these other situations, which are just so he can accomplish the agenda that he wants to accomplish with the clean break memo or whatever else they've developed on this greater Israel project after they wrote the clean break memo. But it's not prioritizing America first. It's not. And I can't ignore that. I can't ignore that as far as me just being misled. Again, I think that we should all recognize that, call it out, and hopefully be able to prevent more death and destruction in that region and perhaps prevent a lot of chaos and animosity in America. So that's what I'll leave y'all with. Let me go back to make sure. Sometimes I mute the mics when I'm doing the live shows. I'm like, let me just make sure that this thing isn't muted. I think it ended up being around the same time, but appreciate y'all. Really appreciate y'all. If you want to see Nick's full episodes, make sure that you go to Rumble, support him on Rumble. And y'all know we'll continue to keep hitting y'all with content, reviews. Was traveling a little bit this weekend, so I can't give myself an excuse, but yeah, I try to get the videos out to y'all as soon as possible. But like, subscribe, turn your notifications on, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.